Hello everyone, this is part 22 of What If Naruto Left Konoha and Goes to Sunagakure, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Temari and Tsunade screamed as Gaara's sand rose behind him and slammed into Naruto hard, thrusting him against the wall and holding him there. For Naruto, whose face hadn't changed from its impassiveness, it was business as usual, although there was a thin sheen of sweat on his face. He could practically taste the anger rolling off the Kazekage and, truth be told, it was somewhat frightening. Gaara slowly and methodically walked forward until he and Naruto were face to face, their eyes never leaving the other. Temari and Tsunade had calmed down and were watching what was happening with wide eyes. What the hell were you thinking, Naruto? The blonde blinked and narrowed his eyes. I was catching and king a dangerous criminal, Gaara. I couldn't let him get away. The sand tightened around him further and Naruto winced. What you did was assault 4 Akatsuki members with no backup and no plan in mind. That was foolish. Well, it all worked out in the end. The sand lifted him from the wall slightly and slammed him back against it. Temari screamed for Gaara to stop, but he paid her no mind. What if it hadn't, Naruto? What if they would have captured you? What if Tsunade had not arrived in time? But she did, so we're arguing over nothing. Gaara's voice lowered itself to a whisper as he glared at his friend. If you had SD, what would become of Temari? She loves you, Naruto. How would she handle the grief? How would I? Or Kankuro? What about Tsunade and Jiraiya? You mean something to all of us, Naruto, and you would have thrown that away just to make sure that Sasuke's sentence was carried out. Naruto's head lowered so that his gaze would meet the floor. He hurt her. What? Temari strode forward and put her hand on Gaara's shoulder. He turned to meet her sad eyes. That's enough, Gaara. He did what he thought was right. Don't punish him for that. The Kazekage turned to Naruto and sighed as he lowered him to the floor. Raise your head, Naruto. I'm mad at you as a friend and brother, not as a leader. You aren't being reprimanded. Naruto raised his head and gave him a weak smile. Somehow, that knowledge only makes it hurt worse. I can handle authority being mad at me. Get used to it. I'm still mad at you, Naruto, so don't think you're off the hook. But, we have other things to discuss now. Naruto nodded and made his way back to his overturned chair, righting it, and sitting down with Temari by his side again. He gave her a smile and took her hand in his, intertwining their fingers. She squeezed them reassuringly. Gaara watched the two of them out of the corner of his eye and a ghost of a grin came to his face. Yes, everything would be all right. He turned back to Tsunade and coughed into his hand. In any event, we need to discuss what our next move is. Tsunade. Upon hearing her name, Tsunade tore her eyes away from the two lovebirds and laced her fingers under her chin. Well, I'm not sure. If Kisame is indeed or at least incapacitated, that would leave only a few Akatsuki members. Perhaps we should press into Omegakure and try to K them. Gaara sat for a moment, before shaking his head. We don't know anything about Omegakure, unfortunately, and we don't have the forces for a full-scale invasion. I doubt we could muster up enough allies to do the deed either. No, we'll need to be smart about this. We have time to plan now though. They still don't have all the demons. Perhaps we should seek out the 8-tailed demon host. His, or her, help could be advantageous. Tsunade nodded and leaned back in her chair, spinning to face the village. But would the Jinchuriki accept our help or offer? Not likely. We don't even know where they are anyway. Temari sighed and crossed her right leg over her left. Then have Jiraiya get his spy network working. Jinchurikis are normally a village's least hidden secret, even though they should be a top priority. It shouldn't take too long to find him. Tsunade nodded her head and whipped the chair around to face Gaara. Alright, we'll do that. But who will we send to negotiate with him? Gaara snorted and pointed at the two blondes. Them. Naruto has an innate ability to talk to people and make them listen. Temari will keep him on task. They're perfect for the job. Besides, they're worthless to me right now since they're being lovey-dovey with one another. Too indignant, Hayes, were ignored by the cages. Sunad nodded her consent to the plan. When will they start? I think a small rest is in order. If you allow it, they can stay here for a few more days before heading out. Even if Naruto heals fast, Temari doesn't, and the human body needs time to recover even with the help of medical jutsu. I have to return to Suna tomorrow. Until then, I'll make sure that these two don't do anything tonight that could exacerbate their wounds. Naruto and Temari turned red, whether from anger or embarrassment, neither Cage could tell, but then again, they didn't care. Gaara rose from his seat, Temari and Naruto rising with him out of habit, and bowed to Sunad. Well then, I'll just let these two show me a place to eat. I'm starving. Sunad sighed and waved him out, before glaring at the pile of paperwork before her. She picked the first page off the top and read it out loud. Passion by the market district of Konoha to install more lighting so that we can sell our wares after dark. She growled and crumpled the paper into a ball before winging it into the wastebasket. That's it. I'm going to start delegating more, tomorrow. I need a drink now. She started to reach for her sake bottle and remembered what Tsubasa told her. I forgot to tell him to contact the raccoon. Well, I'm hungry anyway and I want out of the office, I'll just eat lunch with those three. Giving a yell at Shizune that she'd be back later, Sunad grabbed her green jacket off the hook and walked out the door. Temari sighed loudly as she walked between the two men, her arms wrapped around theirs. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was a confrontation boiling between the two and she wanted to avoid that at all costs. She had been unhappy with Naruto when he ran off after Akatsuki as well but realized that he felt obligated to do it. Gaara was not one to take such things lightly. He knew how much Naruto meant to Temari and didn't want to see her hurt because of the boy's recklessness. Not to mention that he considered Naruto a friend and brother. It would have been a hard blow for him, his siblings, and Sunagakure. The blonde was important to too many people. Thinking of the people of Suna led her to think of his students. They adored him. How would his death have affected them? A teacher was like a sage to students, dispensing helpful information, helping them where they were able, listening to problems. Teachers were invaluable to both children and the village alike and, as the premier teacher of Suna, Naruto would be irreplaceable. Every person they passed bowed or nodded politely in the direction, some to her, some to Gaara, but most to Naruto. It only raised her ire more, that they would encourage his reckless actions. That's when she realized that she herself had not berated him for his rashness. She had been so relieved that he was alright that her anger at his actions had not come to the forefront but now, that emotion was bubbling to the surface. She looked at Gaara and they locked eyes, sharing similar looks of disdain. With but a simple nodding of heads, she switched positions with Naruto so that he was in the middle. He was so preoccupied with his thoughts that he didn't notice or sense the two flat palms headed for the back of his head. Smack! Smack! Naruto yelped and rolled forward, coming back up facing the siblings, who were both glaring at him. He growled at them and rubbed the back of his head. What the hell was that for? Temari, now incensed, walked forward and grabbed his collar, jerking him down to face her. He was about to yell again when he saw the tears prickling at the corner of her eyes. His mouth seemed to weld itself shut. Damn it, Naruto. How could you have been so reckless? What if they had caught you? Did you ever think of how we'd all be affected by that? It isn't just you that gets hurt if you get captured. The people that had been passing by on the street began to slow down and Gaara gave them all a hateful look and flared his sand behind him. I'd suggest you all move along. The people scattered immediately and soon the whole street was deserted, except for the three Suna ninja. Gaara turned his attention back to find a wide-eyed Naruto staring at Temari, who had apparently been babbling while his attention was elsewhere. And another thing, you jerk. You ran off without checking on me. How could you do that? But sweetie, you had Sunad. I don't give a damn. Gaara felt a presence beside him and turned to find Sunad looking at the scene with much amusement. He quirked an eyebrow and shrugged before turning back to the one-sided argument. I thought you had paperwork to do. Screw paperwork. This is much more entertaining. I was hungry, and I have to tell Naruto something that I forgot to tell him in the office. And you haven't even apologized yet. But Temari, I can't apologize if I can't get a word in. You got a few words in then, you asshole. Sunad snorted and covered her mouth. Temari was really letting him have it. Amusing as it was, However, she couldn't have the two blondes fighting in her streets. Temari was taking a deep breath to launch back into Naruto when she heard a slow clapping behind her and turned her head to find a bemused Hokage, with a curious Gaara behind her. The blonde girl flushed red and dropped Naruto into the dust. He huffed and pushed himself back to his feet. Tsunade-sama, I'm sorry. Tsunade gave the stammering girl a warm smile and waved her hand dismissively. Oh hush. I enjoy watching Naruto get verbally castrated by someone other than Sakura or myself. It's nice to know that you don't let him get away with everything. Temari offered up an embarrassed smile while Naruto glared at Tsunade. The Hokage grinned cheekily and clapped her hands together. So, what say we find someplace to eat? Preferably with a fine selection of alcohol. For some reason, Jiraiya seemed to sniff them out, and by the time they reached the restaurant, the Toad Sage was right alongside them. Naruto had wanted Ichiraku's, but it was shot down in favor of a finer eating establishment. One with a fine assortment of wines, beers, and of course, sake. Once everyone was settled in and a couple rounds of drinks had been served, Jiraiya locked eyes with Naruto and became serious. So, I hear that you're going to try to recruit the Eight Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto's drink had been halfway to his mouth when Jiraiya spoke, and he sat it down with a frown. I have never understood how you always know things ahead of time. Jiraiya grinned and tapped his ear. I keep this to the ground. It also doesn't hurt that toads are all over the place. They see a lot, and all it takes is one of the summoned toads to translate, or an innate ability to communicate with nature. Naruto nodded his head in understanding, and Jiraiya quirked his eyebrow, waiting for an answer. Yeah, we are. It was Bar-chan and Gaara's idea. Temari and I will be going to talk to him, try to convince him to join us. Jiraiya shook his head and swirled his sake. He won't. He's fiercely private and hates to be bothered. Naruto thumped his head on the table in defeat. Usually when Jiraiya said no to something, it was because he'd already tried, or he'd known someone who tried and didn't think it was possible. Temari rubbed Naruto's back consolingly and watched as he raised his head off the table and rested his chin on the wood, looking from one to the other. I still gotta go though. It would be a wasted opportunity to get someone powerful on our side, not to mention give Akatsuki a thing headache. Temari nodded in agreement and sipped at her wine. The food that she ate only made her wish Naruto had cooked instead. The beef was undercooked and the vegetables had been steamed too long. How she wanted to be home with Naruto in the kitchen, in an apron. Temari, what do you think? She shook herself from her thoughts of a half-en Naruto, an apron, and a bowl of whipped cream, and glanced around, noticing with embarrassment that they were obviously waiting for her answer. What were we talking about? Gaara sighed and shook his head. You can't afford to be hormonal if you're going with Naruto, Temari. Get your mind out of the gutter. Her mouth opened slightly in disbelief and she growled out her reply. My mind was not in the gutter. Then explain why your nose is bleeding ever so slightly. Temari grabbed a spoon from the table and looked at her reflection in it, before dropping the silverware and dabbing at her nose with a napkin. She glared at a snickering Jiraiya. Not a thing word, pervert. The older man merely grinned and sipped his sake innocently. I'm not the one bleeding from the nose, my dear. Naruto put his hand over Temari's to calm her, lest she assault his mentor. Since we've been assigned to do this, do you have any info on where he is? Jiraiya scoffed and leaned back in his chair. Have you forgotten who you're talking to, brat? I'm the great. Yeah, Toad Sage, super perv, yada yada yada, where is he? Jiraiya grunted and slurped his sake again. Well, if you're going to be rude, I'm not telling you anything. Get your own information, ya little bastard. Naruto sighed and put his head in his hands. Ero Senin. Nope, not this time. Respect is something to be given, Naruto, as is information. Tsunade reached under the table and Jiraiya grinned pervertedly for a moment before releasing a high-pitched squeal and whimpering. Everyone looked at him curiously as he squeaked out his answer. Okay, he's in a shack up on a mountain in Kumo. Now, let me go. Tsunade brought her hand back onto the tabletop and poured Jiraiya another cup of sake before giving it to him while smiling sweetly. See, was that so hard? Jiraiya just glared at her and sucked down his sake, holding out his dish for another pour. Naruto, seeing he wasn't going to get anything else, rose from his seat, Temari rising with him. Well, I guess we'll go to Hinata's house and start packing to go. Gaara grabbed his wrist before he could leave. Do not be hasty. My sister still needs rest and so do you. You will leave in 1 week and not a day sooner. The Jinchuriki will still be there. Temari was not convinced. But Gaara, time is on our side. Akatsuki has taken a blow and will take time to recover. Madara will have to regroup and replan. He was not planning to take you here. You are the last on their list. They'll try for the 8 tails next, but they'll need strength, and Hoshigaki is a valuable member. If he is not they will spend time to heal him. She nodded her head in consent, but she was not happy. She didn't want to be in Konoha anymore and she was sure Naruto didn't either. Before the 2 blondes could exit though, Tsunade called them back. Naruto, I nearly forgot to tell you something important. You need to contact Tsubasa again. He wants to talk to you about something. He nodded and wrapped his arm around Temari's waist as they walked out. Tsunade watched them leave with a sigh while swirling her wine glass. Ah, young love. Jiraiya grinned and downed his sake. But what about, old love? You're just lucky I love you enough to actually even consider touching you. A cough from beside them brought their attention to a disturbed Gaara, who rose from his seat quickly. I believe I shall retire as well. I've heard enough. Jiraiya watched the Kazekage leave with a twinkle in his eye. Dumb kid. If he'd have stuck around, he might have learned something. He turned back to a flustered Tsunade and his grin lessened. What? You're sleeping on the couch tonight? Naruto and Temari went to a secluded training ground, one that didn't look like it had been used in a few months, and Naruto bade her to stand back, citing that he didn't know what kind of mood Tsubasa would be in. She stepped back, he flipped through the hand signs, and with a cry, a large puff of smoke heralded Tsubasa's arrival. Hello, young ones. It is good to see you again, and especially you, Temari. I hope you are in good health. Temari nodded and bowed to the raccoon. Hi, Tsubasa-sama. No need for that, young one. Naruto, where is Sanzoku? Naruto shrugged nonchalantly. I dunno. Haven't seen him since this morning. Allow me to rectify this. Tsubasa closed his eyes and flipped through a few seals of his own and with a smaller puff, Sanzoku arrived, curled up asleep on the ground. Sanzoku, wake up. The small red panda looked up sleepily and squeaked when it saw who was before it. Tsubasa-sama. Forgive me. I didn't realize you were here. Where are we? Tsubasa sighed, his breath rattling the treetops as he gazed upon his smaller subject. We are in a clearing in Konohagakure. I must say, you have become quite lazy in your time with Naruto. Do you need to be replaced? No, Tsubasa-sama. Of course not. Or, leave him alone, Tsubasa. His laziness is somewhat endearing. The giant raccoon turned his gaze on Naruto and his eyes hardened. Indeed. Now then, you and I must speak. Naruto blinked and swallowed nervously. Okay. You summoned me the other day without warning to assist you in a battle. While I do not mind, our deal was that you would restore Suna to her original glory. Why have you not fulfilled that obligation yet? Look, I'm getting there. It's not so cut and dry as just doing it. I can do it to the desert, but it takes time. I need water sources and digging for them is slow work. I'm trying. Alright, I believe you. It has been long since I put so much faith in a human, Naruto. Don't make it so that my faith is misguided. Naruto puffed up indignantly. I would do no such thing. I'm a man of my word, Tsubasa. When I say I'll do something, you can count on me accomplishing it. Tsubasa looked from Naruto to Sanzoku. Naruto stood proudly with his chest out. Sanzoku was seated on his rump with his head bowed in respect. The raccoon regent turned his gaze upon Temari and gave her a toothy grin. And you, young lady, do you believe my faith in your chosen is misguided? Temari shook her head vehemently, her ponytails flopping, and gave Tsubasa an emphatic, no. The giant summon nodded his head and grinned at all three. That is all I needed, a reaffirmation of your loyalty to the raccoons and the knowledge that you were still upholding our bargain. Call on me again should you need my services, and I'm quite sure you will. It has been a long time since any prey escaped my clutches. Naruto sighed in relief and grinned up at Tsubasa. How did they escape from you? I'm not entirely sure. 1 second they were there, the next they weren't. It might have been genjutsu. I'm just not sure. Well, I must be off. Remember to call on me if you need any more assistance. Temari and Naruto covered their faces when Tsubasa dispelled himself, forcing a giant wave of wind and smoke to cover them. Sanzoku anchored himself to the ground and covered his nose with his paws. Once the wind had SD down, Naruto scooped the red panda onto his shoulder and wrapped his arm around Temari again. Let's go home. I'm taking a shower and going to bed. Care to join me? Temari grinned and nestled into his side more. Oh, absolutely. Gaara went home the following day, with instructions that once they had finished their mission of contacting the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, they were to report to Tsunade and then return home to Suna immediately. They really liked that order. They said goodbye to all their friends in Konoha and struck out on the road to Kumo. Jiraiya had been able to find the name of the mountain they should be looking for, one Mount Unreikyo. They would need to be careful on their trip to Kumo. Konoha was not well liked in that place and Suna, as an ally, was about as welcome as a rat in a corn bin. They would need to be careful as well with the Jinchuriki. There was no telling if he was stable or not, or if he would even accept their invitation. It was a long 6 days to Kumo, but it was refreshing for the two to be out on their own, with no one watching over them. Days were spent in idle chatter and plans for the future. Naruto was planning on starting on his house when they got back. He said it had been too long since he'd had his own place. Temari wasn't happy about that until a certain memory hit her. Naruto wanted her to move in with him. She excitedly asked him how long it would take and he said less than a week. He'd been reading up on construction practices and with his cage bunshin, it would be nothing at all. Plus, he'd save money doing everything himself. It was a sound plan. Temari just wanted Akatsuki to leave them the hell alone. Her whole life she had been unhappy and when Gaara started acting normal, it had a snowball effect. She started to be genuinely happy for the first time in her life and when Naruto came along, she could say it felt good to be a woman around someone, not just a hard-ass bee. She had been scared to death when Naruto ran off after Akatsuki. Thoughts of his capture and subsequent death had run rampant through her mind. When she woke up next to him and heard his soft breathing, she had simply collapsed against him in relief. Now though, she wanted to get this mission over with and get back to Suna. Once he had the house built, she would get to do something she'd never done before, shopping for furniture. Oh sure, she'd picked out things for the compound before, but never for herself. Naruto was thinking along the same lines as Temari. He wanted this mission over with. He had something to build when he got back home. His own house. Not an apartment, not a shack, not a bedroom with friends, but his own, real house. The only component he wanted in the house for sure was Temari. He'd sleep on wooden floors if it meant she was there. Mount Unreikyo revealed itself through the fog in the distance and Naruto shivered at its size. Most assuredly, the Jinchuriki would be all the way at the top or at least close to it. He hated Kumo already. It seemed to be nothing but limitless mountain ranges with thunderstorms thrown in. The two blondes stopped at the base of the mountain and looked up. They could barely see something protruding out of the side of the mountain, about 3/4 of the way up. That had to be it. They shared a nod and began bouncing up the rocks, forsaking the path. It was much easier to stick to the rocks with chakra than to spend all day walking a winding path. Within 20 minutes they landed on the precipice outside the small shack. Naruto and Temari looked around for a moment and found nothing. Guess he's not here. A low rumble came from inside the shack and Temari looked inside the door, only to scramble backwards, falling on her butt and backing into Naruto's knees. He looked down at her curiously as she looked up at him. What was that all about? There's something in there and it isn't human. Naruto frowned and made his way over to the door, peeking inside. All he could see was darkness. I don't see. A fist met his nose and he stumbled backward, clutching it as blood ran through his fingers. Temari jumped to her feet and pulled her fan from behind her back, her head snapping back and forth, trying to watch both Naruto and whoever had hit him. A dark hand found its way to the doorframe and a groan was heard as the individual stepped outside into the sunlight. Oh goddamn, I hate the sun. People visiting in the day isn't any fun. Temari blinked at the bad rhyme and watched as the large, black man stretched and bent in several directions. Her aritical mind observed the many swords on his back and she quickly classified him as a kenjutsu master, not just an expert. They were ill-equipped to fight such an opponent, especially in his element. A quick snapping sound let her know that Naruto had finally reset his nose and he stepped up beside her. Naruto let out a sigh and observed their mission. He was an odd one, his face contorting this way and that, and his body seemed to be in constant motion as if moving to some unheard rhythm. The man constantly shielded his eye from the sun as he looked at them. I was sleeping back there in my own little world. Now what brings you up here, you rude blonde boy and blonde girl? Naruto noticed that the man was trying to rap and was doing it badly and snickered. It was kind of a cool way to talk, he thought. Temari wrinkled her nose in disgust. Why the hell did she have to meet so many weirdos in her life? Was it so much to ask for one to talk normally? Seeing Naruto had a goofy grin on his face, she realized she'd have to be the spokesperson. We're ninja from Sunagakure. We've come to offer you our help in exchange for yours. Oh really, fly little honey. I don't do nothing for free, that costs time and money. Temari sighed when she heard Naruto snicker again and rubbed her temples. Could you please speak normally, sir? This is serious business. We're here to tell you about an organization that is trying to capture all the Biju and Jinchuriki. Hachikira is no fool. Avoid the Akatsuki is the golden rule. Naruto smiled at the man. Is Hachikira your name? The black man nodded and bobbed his head up and down. Hachikira is the name. Ask me again and I'll tell you the same. Temari covered her eyes with her right hand and leaned against her fan. Sir, please, stop. The man, now identified as Hachikira, stopped gyrating and looked at Temari. She thanked whatever gods were listening and coughed into her hand. We've come here to speak with you about a possible alliance to defeat the Akatsuki. You are a part of their plans and, well frankly, we need your help. You're a lot more experienced than most in dealing with a Biju, and since you have the second most powerful one, we thought you could help Naruto, my companion. Kira was now standing stock still and looking at Naruto with intensity. She was about to speak again, when he held his hand up. I know who he is, little lady. We've met once before, but neither of us knew what the other was. Naruto nodded his head. That Kumo bar, right. The one you got tossed out of for rapping badly while drunk. Kira's mouth turned up in a small sneer. They just don't appreciate good rhymes. Come inside, we'll talk there. The sun is on my eyes. Temari swung her fan to her back and set it into place. Will you stop rhyming and speak normally? Kira turned in the doorway and grinned at her. Does it bother you, little lady? Somewhat, yes. Then, yes, I'll rhyme. All the time. When I'm in a bind. When I'm in a line. Anything just to mess with your mind. Naruto and Kira both laughed as Temari grit her teeth and stomped her foot in annoyance. Naruto watched as Kira disappeared into the inky blackness and kissed Temari on the cheek. He's just doing it to annoy you, Temari. I think he likes you. You're probably the first woman he's seen in months. She huffed and followed him inside. There was nothing in the shack, it was just a cover that led into a cave. A light suddenly flared up and they saw Kira lighting a lamp and hanging it from a stalact. He turned to them and folded his arms as he sat on a boulder. Well, you came here for a reason. Let's hear it. Kisum coughed and leaned over the bed to spit out the black glob of blood and poison that had been coursing through his system. He had never felt so weak in all his life and thanked his lucky stars that Itachi had gotten to him when he did. His physiology normally took care of poisons, but this one was foreign and tougher than most. He spit up another glob of blood and laid back on his pillow. I'll K that bastard. He'll never know what happened. No, he'll know. I'll hold him down and skin him alive with Samehada. I don't believe I've ever seen you so weak, Kisum. I could K you now and no one would even know. Kisum looked up over his chest and saw Pain and Conan standing in the doorway. He coughed again and simply laid his head back. Leader Sama, to what do I owe the pleasure? You observed firsthand something unheard of. Tobi, Itachi, and Zetsu told me what they saw, but you experienced it firsthand. Tell me about Uzumaki's new power. Kisum groaned and barely was able to lean over the bed before coughing up a large amount of blood. He couldn't wait to be fully healed. Well, he commanded the plants. Pain's eyes hardened and he glared down at the shark man. Go on. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.